Colin Ferguson reached out to my then partner, the late William Kunstler, who was one of the best known, and certainly in my view, the most renowned civil rights and criminal defense lawyer in the last half of the 20th century. Reached out to him and we said, well, okay, we'll come out and talk with you. I mean, we're not making any commitments. And we went down to Nassau County Jail to see Ferguson. He was, obviously wildly unpopular in jail. And I remember we were placed in a cell with him and the door was locked. So just in case he decided to murder a couple of civil rights lawyers, in addition to the other people he killed, Nassau County would just, well, it happens, too bad. But he didn't, and he had a remarkably lucid conversation with us. It was his first, and I dare say pretty close to his last lucid conversation, where we explained the contours of a possible defense, an insanity defense, based on his corrosive exposure to racism, which we eventually got dubbed the Black Rage defense, but it was always an insanity defense. There were all of these warnings, all of these, I don't want to call them cries for help, but red flags, yellow flags, screaming stop signals, and each time he was just shunted to somebody else, and you could almost, in the records, there was almost a palpable sigh of relief that he's moved on to some other obsession and he's no longer fixated on us. That trial was going to be a mockery of the trial process. That yes, it would look like a trial in the same sense that if inmates in a mental institution decided to put on a play and the theme of the play was a trial, that would look like a trial too. But it wouldn't erase the fact that this was poisonous insanity burbling around. And I understand why Colin wanted that, because he was a delusional paranoid. I never understood why the judge and the prosecutor wanted it. The bar is very, very low in this country and in the state of New York for what we consider to be competent to stand trial. Competence is defined as to whether or not the defendant first understands the nature of the proceedings against him. That is, do they know they're in a courtroom, there's a judge, there's a jury, they're charged with something, or do they think that they're sitting around, drinking Jell-O shots in a Martian cabaret? Okay, easy standard. Second, are they able to assist in their own defense? And that term is defined in the most simple and reductive manner possible. So if you say, hey, Colin, could you hand me that law book? And he hands you the law book. Yeah, he's competent to assist in his own defense. But he wasn't competent to assist in his own defense in any meaningful way. And that meaningful way standard doesn't appear in New York law, doesn't appear in American law. There was, really thanks to the efforts of then Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy, whose husband was murdered and his son was grievously wounded. She took up the mantle of gun control. Asking, the very real question is, why on earth can a man who is this nuts and has been involved in all of these different conflicts walk into a gun store, show his driver's license, and walk out with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol capable of, I think, firing 17 rounds without reloading? It was an excellent question. I think that we learned absolutely nothing. We in America did absolutely nothing. We allowed the assault weapons ban to expire, and now everybody has an AR-15 with fully loaded clip, many times extended magazines, where you can shoot 15 rounds, eject it, put it in the other way, the extended banana clips, and shoot another 15 rounds. And one political party in this country has now sort of endorsed that as a national symbol of who they are as a party. So no, we've accomplished nothing, and mass shootings, which were rare, relatively rare at the time Ferguson did his. Now it's just Wednesday in America. Pick a day, another mass shooting. And they tend to be not just far more frequent, but far more deadly because of the weaponry being used. And we are not even close to curtailing access to that weaponry.
Have we come anywhere closer to solving the mental health crisis?
One of the issues that was raised, as it always is, in conjunction with gun crime by crazy people, is, okay, maybe we can't do anything about everybody getting a gun, although we can, but maybe we can do something about crazy people. But we haven't. We've had this conversation now. If you want to take the Ferguson shooting as day one of a national conversation about guns and mental health, what are we, 30 years later? And we're no closer to doing anything about it. We do have so-called red flag laws now, which simply stated permit people to go to court and show up in front of a judge and say, offer some evidence that, hey judge, I think Joe, who has a gun, is really, really dangerous and you should take it away. But those are rarely implemented. And it wouldn't have stopped Ferguson in any case because most people didn't know that he had a gun.
So we're telling this story 30 years later to perhaps spur a conversation that hasn't been had.
Oh,
do you have any?
I think the conversation has been had. It's been had repeatedly. We had 20 kindergartners and 6 teachers in Newtown who were slaughtered by a kid whose mom bought him an AR-15 because she thought it would help him out. That didn't result in any change. Now look, maybe if it had been 20 kindergartners, 6 teachers, and a puppy, that would have been it. Maybe the puppy would have been the turning point. We had some 60 people slaughtered in Las Vegas and hundreds more wounded. We had Parkland. We could go on and on and on. The names just all blur together in a repetition of tragedy. And every time, it's time to have a national conversation about guns and mental health. And every time, we talk about that. And every time, we do nothing about it. And we are further away from doing something about it than we've ever been. It's not like, okay, the moral arc of this conversation is bending toward keeping the deadliest weapons out of the hands of the craziest people. It is not.